You can divide the world into mathematics, numbers, geometry, etc. The truth is that life is more of an analog, living, kind of flowy, feminine system. But in order to understand it, we apply these words, these numbers, etc. For example, everything has a name. These are shapes, individual shapes. For example, we have a triangle, we have the square, we have the circle. These are applications of, basically we're putting names to the concepts. These two circles aren't the same, but they are circles. We can definitely say they are circles. If you play a game like Dungeons and Dragons, everything is mathematics in that game. In a way, of course, there is a social aspect of it, but even in the social aspect, you can break things down. Usually in these tabletop games, you will have a hex grid, which looks like this. If I can remember, how does it work? Yeah, like that. There we go. So you've got this hex grid essentially, and your characters will move on the hex grid. They'll move, from here, then they'll move to there, then they'll move to there, and they'll move to there, etc. This is geometry. You're using geometry to break up land. You could instead, of course, have squares. You have a square, another square, another square. You move from this square to this square, this square to whatever square. These are nice ways of organizing. Now, of course, you could break it down into triangles as well. For example, you move from this triangle to this triangle to this triangle to this triangle to down to here. This triangle, actually, be more like this, yeah. Like that and that. You just move all to these triangles, and you're just dividing space into triangles or squares or hexes. These six-sided shapes. You could divide them into circles. So the issue with this is you have empty space. Of course, if that's okay, then that's okay. So then the attacks in a game is based off, you've got dice rolls in like a tabletop game. It's a number thing. Or if you want to talk to someone and you want to have a good conversation, you have a dice roll, you have a number. So there is a value, you think, on how well you've gone and how badly you've gone. So your movement is a value, your attack, your stats, all this stuff is a value. And again, this is just an application of the intellect, the more masculine intellect, or even the earthly intellect, you could say, to reality. And that's how we make games. We program them. Programming is entirely this, what you would think, this logical thing. Now, of course, it does become artistic and it does become abstract when you get into it. The same way that art becomes logical when you get into it instead of abstract and artistic. Art becomes a science. There's a science to the art. There's geometry, for example, and the mathematics. So you can break your whole life down into mathematics if you want. Of course, systems, as I said, language and math, we've applied these things to reality. You need these things because on the computer, everything is numbers on the computer. Everything is math on the computer. It just, when you use it, it doesn't really feel that way unless you want to capture unless you want to analyze it, you want to analyze it, it becomes math. Otherwise, it's not so mathematic. And the older the computer you use, the more you realize what it really is. Going to one of the main ideas, this is one way to categorize philosophy into math and numbers. So here we have the circle, right? And the circle is a representation of God. is a representation of 1 and 0. Okay? Which is everything, essentially. It's like infinity, it's, you know, it's everything. Because within the circle, everything fits, so to speak. It is, and it's like pure matter that you can, like clay, that you can shape anything you want. And then when we apply division, here we see we have 2, and we can divide it like that way, we can divide it this way, or this way, or this way, any way we want. These are the 2 most orderly divisions. But of course, and the next orderly divisions would look like this. So philosophically, 2, of course, is, you know, positive, negative, yin, yang, day, night, feminine, masculine, the sky and the earth, good, bad, black, white, you know, all these things, all these duality things. And this is dividing life into 2 things. And of course, when you're walking, it's forwards and backwards, it's left and it's right, it's up and down, right? Geometrically or spatially. This is dividing life into essentially mathematics. Of course, then we move on to 3, which is like a triangle. If we want to, you know, divide into a square, it'd be like that. This, it'll look like this, or we can do the opposite way. 3, of course, is, you know, the Holy Trinity of the salt, which is the earthly, sulfur, which is oil, and the spirit, or the volatile spirit. It's the lower parts of the body, the middle parts, and the upper. You know, it's male, female, or some kind of, you know, hermaphroditic figure. It's black, white, and grey. So you're just taking the 2, you know, day and night, but it's also day, night, and in between those, you know, whether that happens to be the afternoon or the morning. You just take number 2 and you just add an extra. And then we go to 4. Here we can see this, and of course we can do it this way as well. And then we have the 4 seasons, and we have the 4 limbs, we have the 4 faces of the body. So again, taking faces, this is a square, so we get to squares again. So it's forwards, backwards, left and right, or northeast, southwest, up, down, left, right. You know, if you're walking or practicing something, you practice walking forward and backwards and left and right. That means you're essentially limiting yourself to the number 4. And again, there are 2 and 4, you know, even numbers they look like this. They have a specific orderly look. Uneven, the triangle, and then number 5, which looks like this. If I can do it correctly, there you go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, as we can see, or 5. It is similar, I guess, to this, because you could just kind of add that if you want to think about it that way. So if the odds and evens are similar, of course, 1's kind of in its own category. You can think that. Anyway, 5, of course, you know, the 5 elements, the head, the arms and the legs. And then 6, you get to the genitals. And again, you're just breaking things up. You break the day into 6 phases, or into 4 phases, or into 5 phases. Into as many phases. You're just breaking things up, and you can equally break them up. For example, here is a piece of, you know, a line. You can go, look, I've broken it up pretty much perfectly. Or we just do this. This is like what, 20%, 80%. So again, we're dividing. We're breaking things up equally or unequally. Usually you just do things equally first, but life is usually unequal. The reality is life is 60-40 or 70-30, you know. Rarely is it 50-50. Now this gets me to this shape. I think of this shape as a universal index. An index, of course, is what you look at the start of a book to see everything. This is the index of life. It's getting a little, essentially it's just square, another square. Put in a circle. There we go, that looks good. And it's, it's up, down, left, right, and then the in-between angles, right? If you're walking, these are your main angles. In a video game, usually these are the main angles that are programmed in, because it is rather, unless you have an analog game where you have an analog stick, which means that you can walk in any direction, but otherwise, if it's like a two-dimensional game, and you have to be conservative with, the sprites you draw. You'll draw a back, like a back sprite of a person. You'll draw a front. You'll draw a side, and the other side, as well. And then you'll draw the back, but they're kind of looking over that way, and then they're kind of looking over that way, and then they're kind of looking over this way, so you got like that, and then they're looking over this way, like so. And these are the 8 angles of a person. Adding more like this and this and this and whatever, etc., is kind of uneconomical. And if you really want to be cheap, you just add the left, right, forward, back. Those 4. If you want to be a little more, make it a little more nicer, you add these. If you're practicing martial arts, for example, these are your angles. You can practice, strikes in all 8 angles. You can apply music to it, the notes, the 8 notes. You can apply, as we see here, the color scale. We can break this down into like yellow, maybe. Get some like yellow, orange, maybe, I don't know, put orange over here, get like a red, get like a pinky purple, maybe a bluey color, another blue, yellow, or like a teal and a yellow, whatever. You can break it down into, a set amount of colors. And the same way with these, you can just have 2 colors. The opposite colors are, for example, on the actual thing here, these are straight opposites. There you go, you've broken it down. You've used this as like a guideline, because here's the thing, even if you're taken to like another world, it's like some different reality, this is still going to be a thing. Unless like the absolute physics of the, like not even the physics, physics comes from, or physics comes from energy, I guess you could say. It is the materialization of energy. So it has the same patterns as the energy has. This is just the patterns of reality. So you would assume in another world, it would follow similar patterns, unless it was completely different. Just reality itself, energy itself was different. Where these shapes, we don't even have the eyes to see these shapes. Eyes don't exist. The voice does not exist. There's some other weird sense or senses. The idea of senses do not even exist. It's so foreign. Of course, that's kind of nonsense, when we talk too foreign, but the idea is this will work in another world. It's the same reason why you learn a language and there is a word for north, south, east, west, assuming the language has a high enough level of intelligence. It's going to have words to describe numbers, 0 to 10, directions, colors, shapes, angles, It's going to have words to describe all of these things, and people, genders, whatever, and you're just going to have to learn the same things. Learn the same concept. So again, applying like two, we have two, which would be male, female. In French, it's homme and femme. In Japanese, it's otoko, onna. There's, in these languages, it's going to have the same thing. You can kind of think like going to another country is almost, you're going to another dimension, another reality, another like sub-reality almost, right? So, but it's the same, like there is bread in every country essentially. They figured out how to make bread, or there's like tea in every country more or less. Of course, that's partly due to trade and outside influences, but the point being, there's fruit in every country. You'd assume so. There's probably fruit. There's probably some, something that's the same in every country, right? And all we're doing is we're distilling reality into its philosophical, like mathematic form, which is the essence, the key of philosophy. And this is my favorite, which is why I like this symbol, because it is the most kind of simplified but perfect thing. Like these directions, these four are pretty nice, but you're missing a lot of space, right? You're missing a lot of stuff. And if you add these, it's perfect. If you add the in-betweens, it's a little bit too much. Like that's nice, but it's uneconomical. You get the most bang for your buck, but you also, it's also incredibly practical. So as I said, you draw things in these directions when you're learning to draw. When you're making a game, you use these directions for movement and such. It's just a way to simplify things and to understand everything. And that's how when you try to learn a new skill, you can learn it very easily. If you're wood cutting, you can think these are the angles of the joints you can use. Maybe you can think that, or with geometry, it's like you can make wood into triangles, into squares, mostly rectangles and squares is what you're working with, but you can use hexes, be a little different, use circles, all these different things, these directions. That's what you can cut wood in, these directions. It's like the fundamentals of reality. Anyway, that's all for this one. Hopefully you get something out of it, and of course feel free to check the link in the description for social and commercial stuff, and have a nice day.